Hi, Matt Genovese here. Look, I wanted to talk a little bit about where I see AI going, and I think it's been about 45 years in the making, and I'll let you understand why that is. Some realizations I had. So I grew up. First of all, I'm going to move my head right over the Commodore 64 screen. I grew up in upstate New York. I grew up on, you can say, the Commodore VIC-20 I got in third grade for my birthday. And it was in the early 80s, and I learned how to program on it. In fact, my dad was not too interested in me going and playing games. He said, no, go learn how to program. And so I did. So I taught myself how to program in BASIC, eventually assembly language, and I became really fluent on the VIC-20, then the 64, then the Commodore 128 even, before I moved over to DOS. And it turns out that many of the adults, who gifted these computers to us kids didn't understand what they could do. And us kids had to figure it out. What I learned from it very quickly was you can't do anything until you write an application, right? You have to write a program. We call it programs. You have to write a program to go do the thing, whatever you want it to do. And the adults are the ones who came over and said, hey, can I go use this to organize my recipes? That's what the commercial said I could do. And I was like, well, yeah, no. I mean, you have to write an application to go do that. And then they said, well, could I use this to do inventory? Could I use this to do my budget? Like, yeah, you can, but you have to have a program for it. And that quickly became what I had to tell any adult, right, who thought they can come over and just type in, hey, this is what I want to do. And I was like, no, it's not that easy. So it was kind of, they had the right idea, but it turned out that it was a little early because that wasn't actually possible at that point. So what did we end up doing? Well, we ended up getting this, right? So this was, more modern day, I suppose, where we have apps for everything. And that's kind of the joke, right? There's an app for that. And you couldn't get anything done until you have an application to do it, or we call them, apps or solutions, I think, if you're in the enterprise world, right? So you needed to have something to do something with the data that you have, somewhere. But at least you had the data, right? That was kind of nice. The data existed on your own system. The problem was that it was usually in some binary format where you couldn't really get to it unless you had the app. So that became a pain, right? Now, this is where we're at right now, or where we have been at. Of course, this was a little bit earlier. And then this arrived on the scene, right? So now we have this kind of different interface, right? And granted, this is an application, but it's what's behind it that's most interesting. Because the people that came to me and said, hey, could I go have an application? Could I go do something here? I had to tell them, no, you just can't start typing it in English. You've got to learn how to write in BASIC, or how to write in C or Lisp or C++ or Pascal or whatever it was, right? You had to write your program. Nowadays, we find, wait a minute, English is enough. I can go and type in English, and I can tell it what I want, or Portuguese, or whatever language you want. And it will go and understand what I'm trying to do. And now with agents, it can actually go and do things, right? And then you have to, the problem is they are trained on data that is most likely not the data that you have. So there's this idea that I've got to bring in my own context into this conversation so it can know what to do with it, right? It can know that, hey, this information that I have, I'm not trained on it, so I got to go and look at what this information is and do things with it. And it's very valuable. It works really well. So this is, but our work day today is often bringing in these files into the AI, and the AI does stuff with it, and then we take the output of that and bring it back out, right? So that's how things tend to work today. Developers, on the other hand, they're ahead of the game, right? Because they're the ones that are building this stuff. So they have environments now that they can build within. This is a screenshot of VS Code. AI is really part of the user experience, right? It's part of their process. It's an engine, but it's working within the context, within their preferred way of interacting with code. And it can go and do things for them, excuse me, that allow them to get their work done in a way that is native and intrinsically understandable to them, right? It integrates well with how they work because the output of this is usually code. So the AI is working on code, generating code, and it goes back and forth. It becomes a single place to go and do their work because they're developers, and this is going to work for them really well. The problem we have is the rest of us, who you might call knowledge workers, this is what we get. And it's great, by the way. I'm not complaining. But I am saying that our medium as knowledge workers is often not in code. And it's not going to be in places like Claude Code, which is where many of us are being forced into because that's where, that's the environment we have today. I tend to work, and I think many tend to work in documents and other structured information. And what I have to do is exactly what I said before. I got to bring documents in, do things, and then bring them back out. Now, there are advances in things like CoWork that is doing great. That has allowed me to kind of bring documents in a folder and have Claude go and do things with those documents, including creating new documents and things like that. And I use that all the time. But where are we at, right? Well, I'm going to jump back. So anyway, that is where we're at, right? Where is this going? I'm going to jump back real quick and just reference this really great tool that I thought was excellent when it came out, Evernote. And I kind of jumped on it because it had this magic under the hood that allowed it to go and read information that I thought was unreadable, like from pictures and things like that. I could go and pull in and do OCR and understand some of that context, which was magic. But in reality, the user experience was fantastic. I could go organize, look at my documents, look at my notes. Everything was a note, I think, at the time. And I could capture what I needed. I could link things together. I could reference and search. And it was just all really intuitive because this was much closer to how I worked than anything else, working in this way. And then, of course, Evernote had problems and things like that. But this interface was really good, right? The problem was also it trapped you in their proprietary backend. Your data was on their systems. That was a little bit worse than it was when we actually installed the products on our systems. And that way we had the data, but it was encrypted or it was in binary form or it was hard to get out. It was even harder to get to get our data out when they're in SaaS applications because you're kind of at their mercy, whether they're going to provide a way to get to your data, except for through their application. You got to keep paying for it. And you know all the trials and tribulations with doing that. But I did think that they were on the right track just in terms of meeting knowledge workers where they were at. So, here's FlashQuery. And let me kind of change gears for a moment. This is what I'm building. It's an open source application, free out there in GitHub right now. What is it meant to do? Well, it's meant to basically meet you where you're at in terms of your files. So for me, I work in Markdown all the time, especially with AI, because my objective is to get information out of AI as quickly as I can, not because I'm afraid of losing it, but because the context does not do me any good if it's sitting in an AI context window somewhere, in a chat somewhere. I need to refine over time what I'm trying to accomplish, whatever the goal is, and get it into a document. And the problem is that if I were to do this manually, I'd have to bring a document over to Claude, and maybe I would want to go over to ChatGPT and have it do something else. Maybe I want to have them working together. And that's a hard thing to do. But in the end, the document is kind of the central point of interaction. And I get stuck, right? And I have to end up kind of being a courier and moving files around, almost like I'm door dashing, to bring all this data to different places. So I thought, why don't we have a central, basically a document management system, a way to manage all of my documents that are used and used by and for and with AI, and have them on my machine. FlashQuery is managing access to it, and I have MCP that allows every one of these to connect in any different way that I want to. And there's a lot of tools that I provided for document access. But in the end, the documents, I only have to have one version of the documents. I don't have to keep dragging them around to everywhere. They're all in a single location. And it allows me as a knowledge worker to effectively have my documents in one place and use whatever models I want, and actually to be able to do some very interesting functions, which I'll have to talk about in another video. But in the end, this is this is really what it is. By the way, I mentioned Obsidian here. You don't have to use Obsidian. It's Markdown. You can pull up whatever file you want in whatever editor you want. The nice thing about text files is they last forever, right? If you have a text file from 1980s, you can probably open it because it's just bytes, just ASCII or Unicode now. So anyway, that's what FlashQuery is, and the whole goal is to give you and maintain access to your documents, and let the AI come in and work with them, guided by you, but you don't have to keep currying them around. So let me jump over here and I'll show your data here. Bring in your AI, your editors, future applications, anything you may want to build in the future. It's nice because then you just connect up to FlashQuery and it finds it can get to your documents. The nice thing also is FlashQuery is not trying to take over. You can actually drag documents in and out of your file system wherever you want, wherever you're telling FlashQuery to look, and it will find them and keep track of them and know what they are. But it kind of melts behind the scenes. You don't have to keep tracking all of that stuff yourself. So you can use your file system, and this allows you to build, there's all kinds of applications in the future on the horizon that I know will be coming up that will manage information. And at the end of the day, I think files are going to persist. And it's going to be really helpful, especially for AI and for human readability as well. GitHub today. It's on GitHub today. You can get to it on our webpage, flashquery.ai/open. Building it continually. There's a lot there right now and a lot more that I've got on my little roadmap. I'm using FlashQuery myself, so I'm kind of eating my own dog food, as they say, although I'd prefer to probably find a different kind of food, but I'm eating it nonetheless. And it works well. It does a really good job. And again, I'm not going to go into a big feature by feature comparison here, but it does work. And it's solving problems for me, and I think it's going to solve problems for others as well. Yeah, I think there's a lot more ahead. And kind of coming back to the VIC-20, I think that we have a real opportunity in a way to do what the adults wanted to do back in the 1980s and just ask the machine to do something, and it does it. And that's where we've been wanting to get to. I think anybody who's used ChatGPT feels like, oh my God, finally, I can go and just communicate. I don't have to learn how to program. It's enabling so many people. But I do feel like we need to keep our files and our data under control and to manage that and allow the AIs to excel at what they do and keep the data and everything private and organized in a way that makes sense to us. So anyway, that was all I wanted to say. Thanks for listening. And have a good day.